Welcome to tonight's presentation, and we're really excited to have you. We know that you're very busy, and we're joined by quite a nice group of people, and we hope tonight's going to be really informative for you. Just before we get into the content tonight, I think that it's important that we acknowledge the traditional owners across the land and all of the places that you're joining us from tonight. I'm joining you from Tasmania, and so today that's the Palawa Pakana people of Lutruwita. We pay our respects to elders past and present as the knowledge holders and sharers. But today we're going to cover a bit about the University of Tasmania. We're going to talk about what it might be like for your teens to become a student with us, what it might be like for them to move to the island. We're going to go through a little bit of scholarship information. We're going to go over some of the study abroad opportunities for your teenagers that they might want to participate in their second year of study. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to finish with a Q&A session. We are joined by a few people today, and I'm going to hand over to Chris now to introduce himself and to introduce our other colleagues.
Yes, my name's Chris Ingram. I'm from University of Tasmania Student Recruitment. We've got a couple of people joining us today and two people that I love working with. So we have Ruby Fox. So Ruby is a current fourth year Marine and Antarctic Science student. So she's almost at the point where she's now an early career scientist rather than a student. Very exciting. And we have Jake Stalker, who's the Dean of Students at St John Fisher College. So yeah, thanks both of you for coming along. So thank you and welcome. So I'll spare you too much of the marketing, but I will just talk a little bit at the start about kind of why I believe that this is the right choice for your young person. You know, we have really strong student satisfaction at the University of Tasmania. One of the reasons for that is when you look at the size of our university, you know, we have around 33,000 EFSL, so 33,000 students studying with us. A lot of those students are online postgraduate students. The actual on-campus cohort in Tasmania is about 2,000 commencing students every year. So you're actually starting in a kind of smaller cohort than you would at a lot of big mainland universities. So even though we are an equivalent size, because we specialize in that postgraduate health space, it does mean that you're getting a much kind of like a smaller and just I'd argue a slightly more friendly class size when you commence, because those class sizes could be a little bit small. I can see Ruby smiling wryly, so I hope she'll back me up on that one. Thanks, Ruby. Our graduate outcomes are fantastic, 85% full-time employment for graduates compared to the national average of 80%. And a lot of that has to do with the work integrated learning placements that you get with the University of Tasmania. Being the only university on the island, you know, employers are coming to the university and looking for our students to come and work with them and looking for those work integrated learning opportunities. So our students come out with really, really good employer connections as soon as they graduate. From a student support point of view, we have a wide range of student support services. I think, you know, both academic and kind of wellbeing and social support. Really proud of what we do. And I think one of the other things that keeps me and most of my colleagues here is that we are #1 in the world for climate action. It's something that the university is really passionate about. It kind of leads through everything we do. It's not a fluke. It's been 3 years running, and that's a really conscious choice of the university to make sure that we, you know, really care about climate action. And to paraphrase our Vice Chancellor Rufus, you know, I think we understand there's not a lot we can do as a university, but we know that it's what our graduates can do. So we really focus on that as something important to us. Another thing that we like to show off is the fact that in the last 10 years, we've invested $110 million in teaching facilities. Clockwise in this picture, you can see some of our new buildings in Launceston. So one is the Shed, which is our purpose-built health facility. That running track is our exercise science running track. You'll see Ruby's campus, the Institute for Marine and Antarctic Science, which is in Battery Point on there. Another shot from Inverest campus, Street, which is the art school. One of my favorite buildings, again, right down on Elizabeth Street Wharf in Hobart. And then finally, an outdoor picture of the Shed at our Inverest campus in Launceston. So we do really take it seriously. We are, you know, we're putting our money where our mouth is. All of these buildings have been built with the purpose of either renewable materials or carbon neutrality. So we're even talking about, structural beams of the buildings being made with engineered wood. So again, I, like a lot of my colleagues, are really proud of the fact that we put so much effort into being #1 for climate action. And it's not just actual action that we're doing. And I hope that it pervades everything you do, whether it be a business course or a law course or through to the sciences. I feel that climate action piece is referred to really strongly throughout the university. So I guess, this is about what it's like for your young person becoming a student with the University of Tasmania. There's a couple of things with UTAS. We do things a little bit differently. As you may know, we are the only university on the island, and so therefore we're also the state's tertiary admissions centre. So you've got VTAC or WATAC. Well, we are the TAC for Tasmania, so we have the right to do things a little differently. In Tasmania, the primary way that a young person will get to our university is via our schools recommendation program, which is our early entry program. We find that this is a really good option for us, and especially for Tasmania. So context for the interstate folks out there is there are 53 schools in Tasmania that teach the Tasmanian Certificate of Education, whereas there are 2,700 on the mainland that teach Year 12, either HSC, VCE, WACE, and the like. And so it does mean that some of those schools in Tasmania are fairly regional. The schools recommendation program is a system where we find that students that go to those regional schools that may not have access to a physics teacher, they might not have an advanced maths teacher, they may not have a lit teacher, they don't necessarily have the same opportunity as a student on the mainland that might be at a school with 4,000 students and is fully equipped. We ask schools to rate students on 7 criteria, and those criteria we found correlate really well to student success. So we found the most important things are when the schools, broadly, they say to us that that independent thinking and learning ethic are the strongest predictors of grade point average. So if your young person applies to the University of Tasmania, we do recommend they do it through the schools recommendation program. You can wait until you get an ATAR. For us, the schools recommend program and this methodology works really well for us. We find it's as good an indicator of student success as the ATAR, as you can see by my shiny graphs that show a regression analysis of students' grade point average. Once you've actually applied by the schools recommendation program, then your next step is actually understanding what your offer is for, accepting that offer. And then accepting that offer allows you to then apply for scholarships, apply for accommodation, enroll, and participate in things like our pre-departure webinar, which will be coming up in January. And that's a bit of a last check for students that are looking to move, just making sure that you've got everything that you need and making sure that you are able to, you've got everything lined up as far as scholarships and accommodation. When studying, as a lot of the parents and guardians here will be aware, there's a lot of the student success comes down to that work life and study balance. So really, really can't stress enough to kind of pop everything into your calendar, make sure that you've got everything scheduled, make sure that if you have a job or your support, your study, you may have options for study leave. They might need some help prioritizing commitments. I found for my young person, it's been really good to get them to look at their assessments and when those assessments are due and then work back from that. Again, remind your young person to take care of themselves. That's a big thing. It is a big step, and it's a big step studying interstate. So if they are relocating to study, then, keep in touch. And really let them know that they need to ask for help. In a previous life, I worked with a lot of student success people, and it's an interesting stat that 30% of students who are first in family don't actually realize they can ask their lecturer or their tutor questions. So by all means, encourage your young people to ask those questions and raise those things early. It's really, really important. What's it like to be a university student? So here's a calendar for a university student. Generally, university, it's really self-directed learning. You might have 1 to 2 practical or tutor or lecture sessions per subject, and you might be doing 4 concurrent subjects. So you might have about 8 hours of actual contact in lectures and tutorials a week. And the rest of that time is up for your young person for self-directed learning. It does vary depending on the degree that they're studying, of course, as some are much more practical and might include things like our outdoor education program, might involve hikes and going out into the bush. But certainly, generally it's about attending a couple of lectures a week per subject that you study, and then self-directed learning around that. Really do recommend that they try and stay on campus where they can and in between those, because as Ruby will probably attest, studying at the Institute for Marine and Antarctic Science, you have access to PhD people studying in that space with you, and that support is there if you stay on campus. So we do really recommend, try and schedule your time around you're there. You have the option to attend your lectures and go, but certainly, the support that you'll get and the chances you'll get to talk to your tutors are really, really important. Now, I'll probably ask Ruby on this one around the Tasmanian University Association. This is our student. Important to get involved in things such as this. I think I actually heard this from Ruby. She was saying it's really important getting comfortable being a little bit uncomfortable and going out and doing all of these things and jumping into all of these activities. So Ruby is actually part of the Tasmanian University Student Association. Anything you'd like to add for us, Ruby? Anything that you think that people should know about joining TUSA and participating with TUSA?
Yeah, definitely. So TUSA holds a Clubs and Societies Day at the start of each year. And that's a great one, not just for, showing up with the people that you've met during O Week, but for meeting new people and people in older year groups as well, through the clubs and societies, and really getting to expand your interests. But it is really a matter of just saying yes and rocking up to uni as much as you can, putting yourself out there. I think we've all been through similar situations like that. And then another awesome thing, so TUSA does provide a lot of services, such as their food hub. So that's a really great one to just get students kicked off, even in their first few weeks of uni. Their whole ticketing system is the same across all clubs and societies events, so it's really easy to get to know. And yeah, it's a great way to get to know people and get involved.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ruby. Okay, student experience. So this is where I'd like to turn to Ruby and Jake a little bit here. So as I mentioned, Jake is the Dean of St. John Fisher College. And I think I suppose, putting my parent hat on, I'd like to ask Ruby some questions from a young person's perspective, and Jake from someone who's a guardian, who's effectively a guardian's perspective, a couple of questions around that transition to moving to study. But for you, Ruby, what has been the hardest transition to university?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think it was literally just taking that first step and rocking up in the first week, and preempting the whole move as well. So getting there, having to get a whole room set up in a new state, and then trying to find my way around the city. But we all have Google Maps now, and getting onto the public transport really early and finding your way around before you actually have to start uni was something that really helped me with all of that.
Great advice, thank you. And Jake, if I can ask you, in your opinion of students studying at St. John Fisher, what do you think is the hardest transition for them?
I think the hardest transition for students who join us here in accommodation is kind of similar to what Ruby said, is that initial sense of connection and actually, being there for our new residents, to actually stick out that first really difficult 1 or 2 days as a sense of kind of loneliness and just missing home really starts to sink in. And I think that's why, like a college environment or the accommodation options that we have statewide really hone in on that. We know that those first couple of days are the toughest for people, and it's really important for me and my team, along with our student leaders, to make sure that no one is lonely in those first couple of days, and that we have a really kind of extensive and robust welcome experience backed up with a really professional one-on-one process with the team that I lead, to make sure that those students and new residents who are really struggling have that support in the early days. That's probably my 2 cents there, Chris.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jake. Really appreciate it. Ruby, so obviously you moved to study. What's it like?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the move?
I've definitely really enjoyed my time at UTAS. I think just being Tasmania as it is, no matter what kind of subject or course you choose to do, everyone really is drawn to Tassie for the same reasons. for a little bit of the outdoors, the academics, the arts. And so it really does draw a group of really passionate individuals. And especially our interstate crew, it's always nice to find someone that's from the same state as you back home. And they're often, yeah, super easy to get along with. So yes, I found it awesome. But yeah, as Jake says, the first couple days, but the first month, even as you start to make those friendships, can be really tough. And it is just about sticking it out, saying yes to things, and throwing yourself into it, keeping yourself super busy so you don't get homesick at all.
Great. Thank you, Ruby. And Ruby's done one of the biggest moves that any student can make. Ruby's come from Perth, WA to study at the University of Tasmania. So no mean feat to be that far away from home and that many hours difference from your family. Ruby, did you feel prepared to come to university at the time? Like, is there anything you would have done differently?
Definitely. I think, yeah, it helps to kind of start to think about it a lot of months in advance. So, about this time of year. Jumping onto the scholarships website, making sure you're all over that so you have as much support as possible getting over there. And then also, yeah, making sure that, you've sussed out your units for the year. So you know what to expect, what the kind of your timetable might look like before you arrive in Tasmania as well. So all those sorts of things, just being like super on top of it and making sure that I really scoured the internet as much as possible to figure out what the experience would be like, are all things that really helped.
Fantastic. Thank you. Good feedback. And Jake, obviously you've not done the same experience as Ruby, but in your opinion, what are some of the mistakes that people make? What do you think students should do differently when they first come to accommodation?
I think kind of going along with what Ruby said there is, I think a mistake that I see often is not putting your hand up when something hasn't gone right or something's not as you expected. And coming back to what you said, Chris, I think, UTAS is small enough that all the staff here really genuinely care about whether the experience here at UTAS has been what you hoped and expected. And we know that the move to the island is such a huge one that we really want to make sure that that goes well. So certainly, in the area that I lead is, we have so many different accommodation options, and sometimes it's not the right fit, and that's okay. We have a very different experience up here in Sandy Bay to the city. And I was talking to one of my staff before joining this call about any advice that she'd want to share and what she said was, it's never too late to change something, and we'll make it work, So that's the big thing that I would say to people is just put your hand up. We're not expecting everything to go perfectly, but we are very committed to making it right if we can. So just reach out. And we find that those people who do shout out when they need a hand, 99% of the time we're able to resolve that and get the year off to a good start.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, really, really good life advice in general, I think, Jake. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chris, do you mind
wonderful.
if I add something there too?
Yeah, no, please.
Yeah, one thing that really helped me when I moved was just, I always say it's a feat getting into uni, but it's an even bigger feat getting through the enrollment process. It's quite difficult. So we have awesome people that are ready to jump on the phone, and they can really, really help and make the whole situation a lot less stressful. So don't be scared to jump on the phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ruby. Really good advice. Thank you. I guess, Ruby, how did your family support you? So given this is around family supporting their young people that want to make a move, how did your family support you? What did they do that was really supportive? And was there anything you wish they'd done more of?
Definitely. Yeah, obviously it depends on family situations, 100%. I had my mum come and drop me off when I first moved. And that was really nice. She kind of just stayed in Hobart with me for just a couple of days. I think it was only 2 nights, when I first moved, and we did the big shop together. So we got, all the basics, the bed sheets, things like that. And just having her there and being able to figure it out together was super, super helpful for me. And then, yeah, just being ready for a phone call in that first week as well. You might receive one, you might not receive one. But yeah, that was just the best support I could have had.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks, Ruby. Oh, thank you both. Yeah, really, really please. I know that you know, I can't stress enough. It's a big move. It's a big move for a young person to move, and having that parent checking in on them is really important to make sure. So thank you. But it's not just about, you know, parental or guardian support. You know, a big part is the support services that we offer. So we do talk a lot about academic support, but we have a big range of wellbeing support as well. So obviously, you know, accessibility services where required. We want to make sure that, you know, part of our mission is to make sure that every Tasmanian can get an education, and that includes Tasmanians that have accessibility needs, and of course, students that are coming and studying with us that have those needs. So we have a range of services to be able to help out. Counselling wellbeing after hours helplines are available for all UTAS students. Peer assisted study session, so PASS, that's where, you know, a more experienced student will come and help, you know, junior students along in their travels. Again, you know, get your young people to take advantage of everything that's there and on offer. You know, the worst thing that can happen is they won't need it, and then that's great, they'll succeed. But if they do find that they do need it, then it's there for them. As Ruby talked about, talk to student advisors. They can really help with that enrolment support, especially with double degrees and some of those more complicated options and double majors. It can get fairly tricky trying to work out that timetabling. And that's where student advisors that will be based in the kind of institute or college or school that you're studying will really help you, and they'll understand exactly what you need to do. Yeah, lean into workshops and webinars. You know, they're live and pre-recorded sessions across a range of topics, and it's not just things like this. There's going to be things like our pre-departure webinar, there's going to be study school webinars, there's going to be support webinars, all sorts of things. We have a UTAS app, so please get that onto your phone as soon as you can. If you've accepted an offer, you're a student of UTAS and you'll be able to access that app. So that's a really good way to kind of get the feel of uni life as you see the messages going up on there. So most staff have that on their phones as well, and it's just a kind of nice little reminder, a nice grounding piece around kind of what our students are talking about. Again, we have 24-hour study support. We use Studiosity is the tool that we use for that, and that means that you can get help with, you know, essays and assignments. So if your young person has left until the very last minute, as they often do, then that's available 24 hours right before that assessment's due. We also have our learning lounges where you can drop in and talk with other students and peer mentors. So, you know, your young person's only going to be able to take advantage of these if they are aware and if they spend that time on campus and if they network. So yeah, really, please get them to take advantage of everything that's out there. Let's talk accommodation, and I think I'll hand over to Jake to talk about our Tasmanian accommodation options. Jake, would you like to give us a little intro around accommodation that's provided by UTAS itself?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks, Chris. So the accommodations at UTAS are really quite broad. Obviously, as a statewide university, we have lots of different accommodation options servicing both Hobart, and you can see the 5 key options that we have there in Hobart. And then we also have 5 different options in Launceston as well, catering to a really wide variety of both costs, but also location. And then we have our accommodation up in West Park and Burnie as well. The thing that I really want to mention about our accommodation is that it's definitely not just a room and a bed. Accommodation at UTAS is really a full experience. So we do offer 24-hour support for all of our students. So my team, which is called the Residential Communities team, work from 9 a.m. in the morning until 7 p.m. at night, 7 days a week. And then we have our night management team who actually work from 7 p.m. when we go home all the way through the night, just to make sure that your young person is safe and looked after 24 hours a day. I'd also say that my team, the Residential Communities team, operate a process which we call the regular check-ins. So every new arriving resident that we have will actually have a one-on-one with a member of my team or the equivalent team statewide. And that one-on-one is just an opportunity for the new resident to flag any issues that they might be having adjusting to life here. And we're also really deeply connected with all the other services at UTAS as well. We really want to avoid this situation where someone's coming in and talking to my team with an issue, and then we palm them off and they have to talk about it again and again and again. So what we try to do is capture that information and then do a little bit of the legwork for them to get a resolution, connecting in with the other services around UTAS. And just the final thing that I'll mention, because I could go on all night about accommodation, is that we recognize that, you know, our accommodation options aren't cheap, but we do feel like they're really good value. So everything is included in terms of furniture, Wi-Fi, electricity, water, laundry. We do have people need to bring their own linen and cookware and stuff like that. But more importantly, we have a really extensive budget for events and community building activities. So it's very rare that a week goes by in any of these locations where there's not a food-based event, some sort of social event going on, which just kind of means that although it can, you know, it's, as I said, it's not cheap, there's at least one meal a week that they don't have to worry about. We partner with other people at the university for affordable food options. And yeah, we really put our all into making sure that it's a good value experience as well. Accommodation is one of those pesky little areas that normally has a lot of questions. So I'm more than happy to answer some of those in the Q&A, and we'll also share our contact information so you can reach out anytime. Thanks, Chris.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jake. And I really, you know, I can put my hand on my heart and say that we work really close with the students. So I think what Jake said around us being a fairly smaller university is we often follow students from their high school journey and stay in contact with them throughout their study journey. And I've had, you know, students that were having troubles and refer them back to Jake and refer them back to the people at Fisher. And it has been really good. And I generally think the community building they do is amazing. I recommend you tell your young person to jump onto John Fisher's Student Association's Instagram and just have a look at some of the things that they do. And it's amazing. It's such a great environment.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now we do have some other options. So our other option for accommodation besides, you know, finding their own accommodation is Jane Franklin Hall. So Jane Franklin Hall is affiliated with the university. It is a fully catered Oxbridge-style student accommodation option that sits about 700 metres away from the university in South Hobart. Jane Franklin Hall is, you know, it's a very traditional college experience is what they're going for there. So Jane Franklin Hall includes things like dining at the long table. They have an alumni network. They have a Dean of Academics, Nick, who's a UTAS student, a UTAS Interstate student. So he certainly understands the process of moving interstate, albeit a few years ago. But certainly, you know, Jane Franklin Hall is there for students that really want to not have to, you know, that want everything catered for them and want a bit more of a traditional university experience and accommodation. I think our UTAS colleges, I think they're an amazing community building experience. Jane Franklin Hall is probably for those kids that just want to come in and work and have everything catered for them. It's a different option. It's a bit more expensive than the UTAS student accommodation options, but it's certainly, you know, Joanna, the principal, does an amazing job of building the community at Jane. They get involved in rivalry between the colleges, you know, in a really good way, a really good, lovely competitive sports scene between all of the colleges in Jane Franklin Hall, and it really complements the offering that we have from UTAS accommodation. Support to study. Support to study is kind of our most popular scholarship option. So support to study can include a range of things. It can include financial support for those that might have some financial hardship. It can include relocation support, so a cash payment to help your young person move. It can include accommodation support. So generally up to, in some packages, up to $3,000 credit towards accommodation, which can work out to be, you know, 10 to, you know, probably about 10 weeks of accommodation. So about, you know, half a semester worth of accommodation can be covered under the support to study scholarships if you're staying in UTAS accommodation. And that can be a really good buffer to help you or your young person kind of get set up, get a job and get themselves kind of, you know, going and settled at UTAS. If anyone here, please talk to your young person and ask if they have applied for the support to study scholarship. I do track that against interstate students and I do reach out to them regularly, but there's a lot of applications, so it is hard for us to get everyone. I know that there's, I know looking at some of the names in this, I know that some of us have already taken advantage of that, which is fantastic. but please look at our support to study scholarships. So your young person can apply in a couple of ways. Log in and create an account, very much like our admissions process. You just log into our scholarships process. Fill out your details. Once you've filled out your details, it's really, they're saved for any scholarship that you wish to apply for. And then you can then quick apply for those scholarships. We have a range of kind of, equity and merit scholarships available. I do think the worst thing that can happen when applying for scholarships is that you don't get them. So there's absolutely nothing to lose but the time of putting those scholarship applications in to go and take advantage of those. So if your young person is studying the sciences, look at our Catalyst program, which is for students that achieve a 90 or 90 plus ATAR. Browse through all of those scholarships. Cannot stress enough. We really, it's a good thing for us to have those scholarships go out. We actually love paying out money for those scholarships. It's a good thing for the university and it's a good thing for the students. So please get on board. Let's have a range of learning abroad programs. So we've got some outbound programs where your young person could study overseas at a partner institution. We have 150 plus partner universities in Asia, Europe, and North America. It could be 1 semester, it could be 1 year. We've got a short-term program as well. So if that kind of experience of travel is something that your young person want to do, or perhaps they were thinking about a gap year, they can kind of have that as part of their academic experience. It's always after your first year. So this is something that you'll only be able to take advantage of in second, third, or fourth year, depending. But certainly would highly recommend that if that's something, if they have got that yearn to travel, then they can yearn to travel and still complete their studies via our Learning Abroad Outbound program. If that sounds a bit too scary, we also have an option of what's called University Global Opportunity Program, or UniGo. So UniGo is an elective subject that students can do where their actual student fees and the funding we receive for that allows them to go on a 3-week fully funded international travel experience in either Indonesia, Malaysia, or Vietnam. They get hands-on experience with a diverse range, generally working on kind of charity programs. They'll complete some assessments around this, and this is a subject that will count towards their degree program. It's an elective subject, so if your program has space for electives, you can do UniGo and have this fully funded trip overseas. Even students that may have never travelled internationally before, we do have a grant program available, so that if for some reason the cost of a passport is too much for them, we do have a grant program available that can help with that. So it's a really innovative way of giving that travel abroad experience in a shorter term that still comes with academic outcomes and still has that academic rigor behind it that you need to complete. So it's a really cool program. Ruby, have you been able to have a go with UniGo? I know some of your friends have.
Yeah, no, I haven't managed to do it. I'm doing a double major, so I don't get electives, but many of my friends have done it and have had a blast.
Amazing. Good to hear. Well, there you go. So that's as I said, it's not available to everyone, but if you've got some elective space in the program that you're studying, then you may be eligible for UniGo. So have a look at that there. All right, and I think now we are up to the QA session. So I'm going to hand back to Imogen. I think Imogen's been monitoring the questions that have popped up.
I just thought I would go to Ruby and Jake first and just get you guys to expand on what advice you think you would give to parents who can't move with their kids and get them set up. So obviously, Ruby, you got this really beautiful, wholesome experience with your mum in those first few days of settling in. But if parents know that that's not going to be an option for them, how do you think they could prepare their kids, at home? What can they do? Should they make lists with them? Should they go pre-shopping with them, or send them with a list and some money to buy in Hobart? Or how would you recommend they navigate that? I'm not sure who wants to start.
Yeah, great question. Yes, I've been told by lots of people who haven't had the opportunity to have their parents come down with them as they have moved, even doing a bit of an online shop before they get there, something that they can just pick up. So I have heard that sometimes Kmart does run out of king single bed sheets when everyone is moving into college in the first week. So even pre-ordering that online, doing maybe a Coles online shop or something like that. And then, creating a little bit of a list for them for things that they might need when they get to Hobart. Also just like sitting with them, having a look at Google Maps, even looking at Street View to say this is what your walk to the shops is going to look like. This is how you're going to get to uni on your first day. This is how, making sure that they have ticked all those enrollment boxes and things like that. And if they're having trouble, then helping them through that process as well.
I would just add to that. I mean, in my views, and certainly in my world, the best thing you can do is let us know. So if your young person is going to need a little bit of extra support or is feeling anxious about moving to Tasmania, one, that's so fair and so normal because it's a big move. And secondly, just let us know. Send someone like myself or my team an email. Certainly, if they're staying with us, they'll have our emails. And just tell us that. Tell us that you won't be able to come down. Feel free to call and say you're worried about your young person. That's absolutely fine and that's absolutely normal. And then we can make sure that that's on our radar from day one. And as I said earlier, maybe some of our one-on-one programs will be a higher priority for that young person than maybe for some others. But don't be afraid of being the annoying parent. Certainly in my world, the more calls, the better. Just call away and ask whatever you need. That's our job, is to provide that information, make people feel comfortable. So.
And I can see, Jake, to carry on from that, someone's asked what the process is for sort of arrival and check-in. So if you can imagine that you've just left your teen at the airport, they've gotten to Hobart, they've checked in to say that they're there. What are the steps for somebody once they arrive at the airport and then get to accommodation? What are they going to be greeted by? What can they expect?
Yeah, definitely. It's a really good question. So firstly, when you get an offer, it'll have very clearly the address that you're going to be staying at. And most of our residents do arrive into our accommodation via Uber. Public transport, although available, is not really the best bet to get up to our side on Sandy Bay. So grabbing a relatively affordable Uber is a good first step. And certainly all the way from move-in day right through the following 3 weeks, right up to the end of O week, me and my team have a lot of stuff going on. So we have both staff and student leaders here to welcome. So everyone who's arriving at a residential college statewide will be greeted by a staff member or a student who's expecting their arrival. And then we would be showing them to their room before making sure that they're aware of what's available that day and that week for them to get involved in. As Ruby will know well, it's kind of death by sausage sizzle in those first couple of weeks. So there's always a food event going on pretty much every day. So we'd make sure that they get settled into their room and then they know where to go for the rest of the afternoon and evening.
Jake, can you expand? Someone's just asked about when should people arrive? Should they arrive way before orientation, a couple of days before, after orientation? What happens if they miss that orientation week?
That's an awesome question. It was something I was going to bring up, and I'd love to get Ruby's view on this as well. So our move-in date is actually 2 weeks before orientation, but it's a flexible arrival date. So you can arrive anywhere as early as the start of February, right up until the end of O week. So that's fine. My personal recommendation is to get here at least 1 week before O week. O week is such a fun and full week of connecting, exploring the island, exploring Hobart, and meeting friends, that it's really good to have an extra week up your sleeve to kind of get the practical stuff out of the way, make sure you buy all your kitchenware, linen, get a bit of a lay of the land, so then you can really throw yourself into O week. Does that feel right to you, Ruby, having
Yeah,
gone through it?
Yeah, I think it also depends on your kid as well. So yeah, if you think they're going to be okay and they won't get too homesick, giving them that full week is probably going to be perfect. A lots of time to get stuff done. For someone that might become a little bit more homesick, maybe just those 3 or 4 days before O week to
really
get
good
that
advice.
stuff done, just so that they're not sitting in their room alone for long periods of time.
Yeah, really good advice.
And I think there's a couple of questions I can sort of join together here. And Ruby, you might be able to input in this as well. there's lots of ways that you can get to our island. You can take the ferry with your car, or you can fly. So if you are bringing a car to Tasmania, what is the process for doing parking permits and parking around campus? Should there be particular accommodation buildings that students should look in if they're going to bring their car? Should they look more on the Sandy Bay campus rather than living in the city? And what sort of storage do they have available for their things once they arrive? Do they get a storage locker? Is there a place for them? I know someone's mentioned, can they bring their kayaks? You know, I know some people are coming and they're going to go forward driving, and they're going to go camping, and they're going to bring those wonderful things with them so they can join in those activities. How do people go about that? So we're talking about parking, storage, coming to the island, bringing your things.
Jake, do you want to take this one, and then I can talk about mine?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll just go straight into talking about parking. So our CBD accommodation is really built around the idea that you live and study and walk in the city. So as a result, there's not a lot of parking available for our residents in the city. We do have some, but typically a first year resident won't be eligible for that parking because there is a bit of a wait list. So we tend to find that people who are living in the city are often studying subjects that are close to that site, or they're really comfortable making use of our free shuttle service, which is called the Uni Hopper, which really does mean that anywhere across the campus is only 10 minutes away via free bus. But yeah, for sure, for those people who have four-wheel drives who can't go without their car, Sandy Bay is definitely the place for that, as Ruby can attest to as well. We have plenty of parking here. We have parking available for all our residents. And we also have storerooms available for kayaks, mountain bikes, all that type of thing. I think a real, core identity of a typical resident in Sandy Bay is wanting to explore the island and be part of everything that's available here. So this site, being kind of nestled in the bush, is really suited for that. Yeah, Ruby?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'm an avid surfer, for everyone who doesn't know me. But I did get here without a car and managed for like 6 or 7 months. So I had like a huge 9-foot longboard that I could fit in my room. So it's like quite a lot of space for storage in the rooms, and outside of them as well, in the storage lockers. And then, yeah, so definitely you don't have to have a car to live here. The uni does run some Tassie experience programs as well, where you do have opportunities to go and visit some of these iconic places like Freshnay National Park and Cradle Mountain. They run a little ski trip and things like that. So you don't need a car, but if you do want one, then definitely Sandy Bay is probably where those like-minded people end up, and there's a little bit more space around there too.
Yeah, and I think this lends well to a couple of questions about sort of, I guess, that public transport in Hobart or in Launceston, and what is it like once you move to our cities to get around? And I guess I wanted to touch on this a little bit because I know that some of you on the call perhaps won't consider accommodation. Your team might actually be moving into private rental. And so I just wanted to touch on this because I think it's really great to consider us as rural in the aspect that we don't have trams running through the city. Our main services are bus lines or driving. We have e-scooters, and we do have the Uni Hopper bus that travels around our campuses for free. But if your child is thinking about private accommodation, private rental, I do suggest that you look at the distance as if they were living in a rural sort of town or not a city location. So where 30 minutes might not seem much for a drive, for moving away from home, it can actually seem like a bit more of a hassle once you get here and you have to catch a bus. So consider those suburbs when you're looking at private rentals as well that are closer to where your your child's going to be studying, so that they can take advantage of those opportunities, like catching an e-scooter, or like even walking into campus, or getting a short Uber ride or carpooling. I'm not sure, Ruby, if you have some friends in private accommodation and what they sort of think about it.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that that is one huge advantage of the accommodation sites, especially in Hobart, is we have the Uni Hopper, which runs to every campus in Hobart. And it's a free service that kind of runs every 20 minutes or so. So I'm religiously use the Uni Hopper. I did start out using the Tassie bus service. Coming from Perth, the public transport in Hobart is actually better than what it is here in Perth. It's not too bad. And it is something that you can look at ahead of time as well. So make sure you have a look at the bus routes, because while some places can, be a 30-minute drive away, sometimes it is also only a 30-minute bus ride. So it is accessible, but definitely take into account the fact that easier is better when it's first year of uni, and you're trying to discover yourself and just figure out how to study in a completely new environment as well.
And I know, guys, that we've spoken a bit about O Week on this call, but not a lot of people probably know what O Week is and when it happens and why it happens. It can be a bit of an enigma. Can you sort of maybe, Jake, if you can talk about, or even Chris, talk about when it happens, and then maybe Ruby, just talk about a couple of things that you engage in when you do an O Week.
I think I'd hand over to Jake or Ruby for this one.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I mean, so O Week, it does change by a few days each year, but generally I'm just looking at my wall here. Runs 17th to the 23rd of February this year. So when we talk about O Week, we're really talking about orientation week. And it is a very, very busy week, because you have people like me who are running a program in accommodation, and then the university wide is running a very extensive O Week program themselves, and along with TUSA with their like Clubs and Societies Day, and big days where you can go out and learn about all the opportunities that are available across the uni. When I talk about O Week, I'm in the program that we run up here. Typically run it in the evening so we can complement the university's O Week program rather than compete with it. And it's really just about, whether I'm talking about accommodation or the uni, it's really just about making sure that students, young people, are learning about all the opportunities that are available here. They're connecting with clubs and societies, like-minded people, having a chance to connect with the professional services. That, to me, is kind of the theme of O Week. I don't know if Ruby has any more thoughts on that.
Yeah. So putting on a few different hats here. With a Tassie Student Union hat. So they run tours of the campuses, tours of all the campuses, and then you have like your course specific kind of intro seminar days. And that's all like optional, so you can do it yourself or you can do it in a group, in a guided kind of tour. So that's a really helpful thing to go to. And then that is, as Jake says, well complemented by the college programs. When I arrived in 2022, there was kind of no O Week at the colleges, but we've really built it up over the last few years to create a really, really inclusive and a diverse range of events that lots of different types of people can get involved in as well. So as Jake says, death by barbecue, but it's a really good time, and a time that is very busy and very exhausting, but an important one to get involved in.
Yeah, and students will get emails to click onto the O Week schedule. So I encourage you as parents to interrogate your teens about what emails they're getting from us in the lead up to February, because they will be getting the information about what's happening. And it can even be handy just to print out the O Week schedule, and then you can sit with your teenager and sort of even map out their first week and talk about what they're going to do or what things they could do, get them excited, get them invested as well in sort of turning up and taking that risk to meet new people, which I know can be scary. There's a couple of questions here which I would love to touch on about finding work, because we know that in the schedule that Chris showed us earlier, there is plenty of time in a uni schedule to fit shifts of work around your study. And so we're really lucky at the university. We have a whole team that can actually help your teenager to find work. They'll help them to write their resume. They'll help them to write a cover letter. They'll sit with them and look through all of the jobs that are available around in the city around them. And they'll even keep an eye out for jobs if there's nothing at that moment in time for them to find. And then they'll call them and say, hey, I found something that's perfect for you. So that's called our Career Connect team. And I will follow up our webinar tonight with a great email that has a link to the student portal. The student portal is an amazing tool that every student should use. It connects you with free counselling services, free legal advice. It connects you with all of our Career Connect teams, how to log into student advisors, any support, wellbeing, anything that we have that will really help guide a student along their study journey and support them the whole way along, including work opportunities, is all in the student portal. And as soon as your teenager has actually accepted an offer with us, they get their UTAS email address and they can actually log into this student portal. So you could actually sit at home with them now and have a little play with it and start to look at all the services that are available to them. So when I send through the link, I do encourage you to get their login details and have a little play, because it will mean that they're more comfortable with finding that support if perhaps they don't feel comfortable reaching out to you to ask for it, because I know sometimes that can be a hard thing to do. There's so many questions coming through. So I think just to follow up, Jake, on your question before about storage, what happens when students are going home for the break in between semesters? Do they keep their apartment rolling, or does it stop and they have to come back and set their room back up? What happens in that period?
Yeah, really great question again. So we have a range of options. So it really depends on the needs of each individual young person. So we do have 52-week contracts, which means that people can have the same room for the full year, in which case they don't have to pack up. And then up here in Sandy Bay, which includes John Fisher College, Christ College, and the university apartments, the model that we operate up here is semester contracts. And the idea behind that is it just gives people a chance to go home for the semester break or for the summer without the burden of paying rent 52 weeks of the year. And for all the residents who are on semester contracts, those little gaps, we have storage available. So we refer to that as summer storage. So we actually provide the cardboard boxes, and then the residents will pay a small fee. I think it's approximately $15 a box, and it's a fairly large box where they can put their things and store it in our storeroom on site over the summer. Although I do know it's a little bit annoying to pack up the rooms, we do that for a few reasons. One, everyone who's staying over the summer, we put together in one building just so there's a real sense of community over the summer. And then secondly, it's the one time of the year where our maintenance team have a chance to get in there and fix anything up that needs doing. So in short, yes, there's storage available, it's affordable, and it's a little bit of a pain to pack up your room, but you don't have to take it far.
Thank you so much to Ruby and Jake for coming along, and thank you, Imogen, for hosting.